Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo, and hello, everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where I talk to some great folks out there in the hobby world. Today is going to be kind of I don't know what the word is, like a mixture of topics. I have a friend that I'm going to bring on, a longtime friend of the show, and one of my favorite people to talk to. And I just have some different topics that I want to go through, some things in the hobby that are happening to me personally that I want to get his take on. And there will be the usual sarcasm and probably very little sympathy because it's John Keating. Go Eagles. Yes. Yay for the Eagles.
Next year, man. It's your year.
I don't believe you for a second. Not for a second. What's going on, man? Much to the people won't believe that you're actually surfacing here.
Is there an APB out for me? I didn't realize that people were looking for me.
Well, you wiped your channel, so
I think it's back. Should be back. My channel. Everybody who wants to watch my videos has already watched my videos. So
fair enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of upkeep, a lot of overhead when it comes to channels, podcasts, and YouTube. So just a rethinking.
Funny you say that because I have a lot of people, including some people last weekend a few weeks ago at Strongsville, who said, Mike, I've discovered your podcast and I went back and listened to every single one of them. And maybe that's more doable when you only have 150. I don't know how many episodes I have out there, but there's not thousands of them. And so maybe that makes more sense. But they do tell me that. So,
well, that's good. And I mean, there's a discovery process there. That's great. Like I remember when I discovered Dr. Jim's podcasts, maybe a couple hundred episodes in, I had no problem listening to them back to back to back to back. So getting caught up is fun. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think they've always, but back then I think he was going 5 or 6 days a week. So he was chugging along.
Cranking them out, huh? Well,
yeah.
I'm only once a week for this podcast, and that's enough, truthfully.
Yeah. I'm once a year and it just taxes me. So I might have to do once every leap year, maybe, just to get back into the rhythm.
Well, I think this is your 9th appearance on this podcast. The next one is free.
Okay. Sounds good, man. Sounds good.
You don't even have to sponsor it or anything. Like,
no.
Sponsored by that 70s card show.
I'm a cheap bastard anyway.
So if you're watching on video, you'll see next to me that I have a drawer from my storage facility, also known as the Beast. These are, this is 58 through the beginning of 61, John. So cards you're not interested in, I get it. But
I've got the entire 58 set, if that helps.
You do. I think I helped you get that, actually.
Yes.
And now I regret it because I wish I don't have that. I'm like, dang it. Should have kept
slow on the uptake there. They always said you were the slower Moynihan twin.
I am.
Yeah.
But I have this out, John, because I'm going through and I'm starting to get into SGC a little bit more. Like I'm realizing that I can expand a little bit and I'm getting a little more open-minded in my thought processes and not so PSA only, brain. And to that end, I've wanted to kind of catalog. I saw a video from Terry TJ Mack, and I'll do a whole video about this when I get this done in a year or however long it's going to take me. But he did an inventory of his entire graded card collection, and it was so fascinating to watch and listen
Dude's
to
a
him.
legend, man.
He is
Multi-sport legend.
Insane.
Yeah.
Collection's insane. So he just had a lot of cool stats and stuff. And I'm like, I've never done that. And I'm starting to get enough different kinds of slabs in the collection that I'm like, I don't even know how many I have. I couldn't even tell you truthfully. The registry does a reasonably good job of it. VCP can do a reasonably good job of it, but nothing's perfect. So what I'm doing, John, is I'm going through and I'm literally created a spreadsheet, imported as much of the data as I could from the different sources. And now I'm cross-referencing that data with what's actually physically here. And I'm laying eyes on every single slab and going, yep, got that one. This says I have that one. Yep, got it. And as painstaking as that might sound, I'm having a blast doing it, truthfully. Is that weird?
No, not at all, man. That's what it's all about. As you were describing that process, I was thinking, what a wonderful time to revisit your cards. And you physically have to revisit and touch every card.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole thing is supposed to be about. It's not about, it lets you reflect on the journey, right? That you've taken and kind of wallow in your happiness there of why you're doing it to begin with. I mean, I know the hobby has expanded everybody's, we all start out by ourselves and then, community and friendships grow and all that stuff. But really it's getting back to the basics with the cards and the beauty and then the not so beauty of some of these cards is that's why I got into it. It's not about money or keeping up with the Joneses or anything. It's about the cards. And sorry, I keep looking at this card next to me that I got in the mail today. So that's what it's all about. I mean, I'm surrounded by cards and I love cards, and I've had a similar experience in you very recently, but maybe we'll get to that in a bit.
Well, go ahead, because I know to me, when unless you have just a few cards, staying organized is super important. To not be duplicative in what you're purchasing, unless it's intentional, or for me, it's just I like to know where I stand kind of all the time, and maybe that's the weird personality quirk of mine, but I kind of like to know. And I've discovered through this process, again, I'm only on, I just finished 58. So I've got a lot of years left to
Doesn't get any easier after that, man.
No. And then I've got all my autograph slabs and, literally if it's in a slab, it's going on this master spreadsheet. No matter which company has graded it or slabbed it, I want it on this master kind of thing. I've found so many cards that weren't in the registry for whatever reason, whether at the time, sometimes you get that little alert that says this is in somebody else's registry. You can't, you have to request that they get rid of it.
And you never circle back, right?
And never circle back. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so, the fun of that, oh, wow, that's awesome. And I'm just loving the heck out of it. But what's your story? What have you been doing?
Yeah. So, I paid for years for Beckett OPG, and it kind of I will badmouth them because Beckett is kind of skipped a beat here and lost some relevance, but the product was expensive and it wasn't very intuitive and it was difficult, and kind of every time you put something on there you got angry because it wasn't easy to get around. So my buddies Cooter, Zach, and Bo turned me on to TCDB. So imagine having 200,000, 300,000 cards and then having to manually transfer those over from Beckett OPG to TCDB. And it allows you to, again, skip realize how many cards you skipped or stuff that wasn't covered under Beckett that's in TCDB. So now I spent the end of last year switching everything over to TCDB, and some people would find that to be a grind. I had an absolute joy doing it, and could not have had a better time collecting, because again, it gets you in touch with your collection. And as you know, I collect pretty much everything. So it was fun seeing and doing. I'm still doing. I mean, I just bought 100,000 cards within the past month, so I'm still filling gaps. And out of those 100,000 cards, I probably needed 10,000 of them or less. But it's fun filling those gaps and seeing the cards evolve. Even though I love old cards the most, it's neat seeing the evolution of design and throughout the years, and then the saturation, and then the pullback by the card companies, the consolidation of the card companies. So not only are you looking at the history of the players and the sports and teams and cities and all that stuff, but you're looking at the evolution of cards and how they've evolved, and you see some bad ideas, you see some good ideas, but it's really educational, and it's entertainment at the same time. So having an absolute ball with that.
What's the worst part about it?
The worst part is finding. Here's the worst part. About 3,500 1989 Fleers, so. Good thing is, I have all the sets from the 70s, all the sets from the 80s, and more older and newer and all that stuff. But it's, the worst part for me is discovering how oversaturated some things were in the 90s. Like, did you really need to do, a 30 card set on the best relievers in baseball? You didn't. The answer is no, you didn't. So, we what you learn is that I like to say that there's boring Hall of Famers like Dave Winfield and Harold Baines and Tom Glavine and stuff like that, because there were so many cards made of these people. And it's a shame, kind of waters down their legacies maybe, but when you're putting out dozens and dozens of cards, one manufacturer in 1993, Fleer Ultra, dozens of Tom Glavines, it's just not fun. And it kind of, maybe it waters down the legacy of those certain players, but that's what makes the 70s and the 60s and the 50s and earlier so special, when you only have, a 58 All-Star Stan Musial as your first Topps card. It makes that stuff even more unique, I guess. So good and bad, still the good outweighs the bad exponentially.
When you get in a box like that of 89 Fleer, with obviously bunches of each card, and you put it into trading card database, are you putting, I have 13, Mike Lefebvre's or whatever,
Hold on. I just loaded in for trade 26 Fernando Valenzuelas.
Okay.
Right. So
from 89 Fleer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here they are right here. So there are, a dozen plus Fernandos. Somebody might want to trade those. And guess what? Like, I sell on eBay, Mike, but I sell on eBay to buy more cards for my collection, right? So sell my duplicates, all that fun stuff. So why not trade for the same thing, not get taxed, right? All I'm paying is postage and getting a bunch of cards back. So nobody gets a cut of it like eBay. But you still have to sell some stuff on eBay, because trading, a 52 Topps sight unseen is difficult for some people. This one's graded, but it's better to have pictures, and that's something that TCDB doesn't have. So anyway, still, as with anything in this hobby, you have different avenues to scratch your itch, and TCDB is one of them. eBay is one of them. Haven't been to a card show in a long time, so eventually I got to get to a card show, I guess. See what that's all about.
They're pretty cool, by the way.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
In case you didn't know. But next topic, speaking of different avenues to acquire cards, not even new, but the explosion, because it's not a new concept, but it's just gotten more widely done in the hobby, and that's this repacker. idea. And my thought is, my question, are they going to ruin the hobby? That's the basic general question. Are you familiar with this whole concept?
I am, but I'm also familiar with the concept of not letting anybody be in control of your destiny. So if the hobby gets ruined or a part of the hobby gets ruined, then maybe that's not something that I want to be a part of. How is a repacker going to ruin my hobby or your hobby or a hardcore collector's hobby? You
Well,
have to. It
I
takes two to
didn't say
tango,
they were going
right?
to ruin the hobby. I was
Right.
simply posing the question for us to discuss. So,
Okay. Well, my point being is why let somebody control your happiness if you are a person who is a gambler, then maybe eventually you'll turn sour on that. But I don't know of any repacking products that I would buy or why I would buy them, other than to take a little bit of a gamble on something, and then you have to be comfortable with whatever the least return will be. Whether same thing with a break or a vintage break, which I've participated in recently. Like you have to be happy with the booby prize, right? And
yeah.
if you're not, then you're not in it for the right reasons. We all want to strike it big and hit the Mickey Mantle 52 and want to Ashes breaks, but you have to be, you have to be rooted in reality where that's only going to happen for one person. So repacks to me don't impact my hobbying. I don't give any thought to it because I'm cynical. You may or may not know this, but I'm a little cynical. So can't help to think that there's somebody gives you just enough taste, but for the most part, you're going to swing and miss.
Yeah.
It's almost like a poor man's version of Dave Kingman, right? Every now and then he's going to hit a home run, but for the most part, he's going to strike out.
Yeah. It's a fascinating idea. I mean, so fascinated by it for the last couple of years that I've really seen it explode in the hobby, even into the vintage world, right? Like you
Right.
said, Ash is doing it. There's other guys that, they'll get a 56 top set and break it up, and you can buy little boxes with all the 56 cards. And I might put 80 boxes out there with 10
Yeah.
cards each or whatever. And you're going to get, somebody's going to get the Mantle, and somebody's going to get the Hank Aaron and whatever. And somebody's going to get, the no-name guys.
What's frustrating about that is just the same as some of the nefarious things that happen in hobby stores. You don't know when the big hit's been hit. I know that there's a Fleer basketball set out there with Wilt and Bill Russell and all that stuff, and there's packs being sold, but you don't know when the Wilt rookie card was hit, right? So, or does somebody know that and still selling that? Or, same thing with 56. Is the Mantle gone? Is the Jackie gone? Is the whatever gone? Like you don't know that. So it almost feels like you're not playing a fair game there. If 80 people are lined up and 80 people buy packs, and that's a different story. But you can be, I know whatever it was, the Dollar Club the other couple nationals ago were selling backpacks with a satchel, chance to get a satchel, 53 top satchel. Do I know if somebody had already pulled that or not? Other than word of mouth, there would be no way of knowing that. But perhaps the person who's selling you that backpack, I'm not saying they were, but perhaps that person already knows it's been hit. So that's the unfortunate part. What if the first backpack hits with the satchel and the guy's got 200 more backpacks to sell? What's he going to do? Just pack up, or is he going to keep selling backpacks? So.
Well, it would only be nefarious if he knew, if he saw it pulled and said, "Hey,
Right.
there's a shot at a 53 tops satchel in here," when there's not. That would be.
Well, let me
Obviously.
ask you a question. How many people wait till later to open that stuff up, right? I would think that, if you're buying something, a repack or something like that, you're going to open it pretty darn quick. Just
Sure.
like these days, people go into card shops and rip packs open right there and leave all the base cards, right? There's a reason they're doing that, because they just want to get the hit. So human nature tells me that people aren't waiting to rip those things open, I guess.
Yeah. So you're saying it's more likely that the proprietor would know whether
Perhaps,
or not.
right? Because, again, human nature will also say if you didn't hit on the first pack, you're going to buy another pack from them. And it's not just 1 million Cubs or the person selling the Fleer basketball stuff. It's just the way it is. Those are just examples, and they're no different than regular packs. If you have a wax box and 24 packs in it, and the first one gets the big hit, the autograph, whatever, is that shop owner going to level with you, or is he going to turn it into a Frankenbox where he mixes a couple boxes to get a couple packs together and puts it in a box? Like, people need to sell. People need to. Their job is to sell stuff, and they'll do whatever they have to do to sell, I'm sure.
And even Tops with the Skeens patch,
Exactly. Yep.
How long did they know before they put it out on social media? How many more boxes and cases did they sell for people chasing that card, knowing it might have been pulled weeks before?
When I don't know much about that other than I assume it was a 2024 product.
Yes.
And then the news came out like at the end of 2024 or something that it had been hit. So it's like, you got to kind of clear the shelves and move on to the 2025 product. So the timing of that is interesting, but maybe Topps didn't release that into the wild until very late. I absolutely don't trust any of these big companies to not hold back product. I would think that they would. That's a marketing thing, but whatever.
But getting back to, I think what you made was a great point of, it's not going to move the needle for me at all, whether repackers exist or don't exist. The only negative is, for me in my hobby, is these guys are out there paying pretty strong on vintage, and so it makes it harder for me to get a better deal. But that's like, first world problems, really. Like at the end of the day,
you okay over there?
As Julie's calling me. She's out of town. She doesn't know I'm talking to you, or else she would have not even called.
She would not dare call. Well, hold on, Julie's calling.
Are you talking to Mike? That's probably what she's gonna ask. Yeah, we're busy.
That drives up prices, right? Because they can get more for, but what are you going to do, man? You got to find another way to do it. You got to be more creative, not, I don't know. It's what are you going to do? Is it a fad? Is any of this sustainable, right? We've seen a lot of stuff come and go. Is it sustainable? Do you just have to ride it out? Or why aren't you selling your cards to repackers at a premium and then waiting for that fad to go and then buying them lower when that fad goes away?
What do you think about I'll just sell my whole collection. We'll call it the Moynihan collection. I'll just put everything in every slab. I'll have like 5,000 boxes that you can buy.
Yeah. There you go.
Put including my, Mantle rookie and, 53 Topps satchel. I'll put my page in there and then
why
sell
not?
it all.
Why not?
One way to do
Start all over again, man.
No, I can't do that.
Put it in the Wembies.
Put it into Wembies. That's a great idea.
Yep.
I hear people complaining about repackers, and it feels like they're just shouting at the wind, because at the end of the day, participation in the hobby is going to take a lot of different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to do it. Nobody's forcing you to buy a repack product, or if every card that I'm looking for was in repack products, then I would be a little bit more frustrated, but there never are. And it's not that big a deal. Now, if you want to take a swing at one of Ash's deals to try to win a 52 Mantle in a 5 or something and spend what, I don't even know what they cost. That's the other, is it $1 or is it $500? I just don't know.
I do, because I've participated in those.
Oh yeah. What's it typically? What's your cost on that?
Well, he just did one. It was like $2,800 for buy-in.
Whoa.
A Mantle. There was a 52 Mantle. I think it was a 5.
Yeah.
A lot of great cards in there.
I had that 52 Mantle here at my house.
Did you?
I did, because Ash came over and he had gone and picked up that card.
Yeah.
And he also had a 49 leaf Jackie and a 3.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I just want to buy. Let me just buy that. I can't, man. I'm putting in my next repack. And I'm like,
you got guns, man. Why didn't you just make him an offer he couldn't refuse?
Well, because he could always go get another Jackie.
That's true. That's a great. The ones I think he's like $350 $350. I've been in a couple of them. I got a a second-year Jordan 9, PSA 9 out of one of the breaks. I mean, it's a 4-figure card, but whatever, it's just as long as you don't make that. And, I have money to spend, thankfully. I'm not
Right.
saying I'm spending frivolously, but if, why not do that every now and then for a shot? But again, you have to be happy with whatever the lowest prize is. That's what you should be happy with. Same thing if you buy repacks. I don't consider those repacks. I just consider those breaks, and people do set breaks all the time. And I think that's that can be kind of fun, vintage set breaks and all that stuff. But I don't know, is that driving prices up? Like one of Ash's breaks or a regular set break driving prices up? I don't see it that way. I did see it for a long time, with new people coming into the hobby and buying up, and make it difficult on the rest of us. So I guess it's the same thing you're witnessing right now. Is like, yeah, it does impact me. Yeah, when people say hobby the way you want, it doesn't mean it's impacting other people when you're overspending. I'm not saying spending a lot of money. I'm saying overspending for a card. So it does impact all of us. So I've never really subscribed to the hobby how you want saying, because it impacts other people. It's like saying drive how you want. If you want to drive 85 miles an hour in a 25-mile zone, then it's going to impact other people. Same thing. So I don't know, man. But thankfully, I haven't seen where it has impacted me, the repacks. You're saying to me, it sounds like it's affecting you on the floor of a card show the most, right? Because they're not doing it on eBay, right?
Genuinely, I don't know if it's
Okay.
affecting me. Truthfully, it does feel like stuff's more expensive, but that could be for a litany of reasons, not just,
How long has that been? How long have you noticed that happening?
So there was post-COVID crazy,
Yep.
a little bit
Everything
of
was
a
impacted.
retreat,
Yep.
and then now it feels like things are it feels like just vintage is really popular,
Well, Dr. Jim just had an episode recently where, well, I don't know, it was an episode or whether it was one of his episodes said that once Black Monday happened in the 80s, I think was it Black Monday? Black Tuesday, one of those with this big stock market correction in the late 80s. He said vintage prices just shot up. So it's like anything, you put you're a man who does financial instruments. Like, that's the safest thing to put money in. It's not putting it into, Wemby's and LeBron's and all that stuff. People probably gravitate towards that and putting money in what appears to be a sure thing, which is vintage cards, because they
Yeah.
don't drop in value. We know they don't drop and they don't fall off a cliff. They have peaks and valleys, but the peaks and valleys are a lot smoother than the rest of the hobby, or even other things. Hey, like all of a sudden you're driving by banks these days and you're seeing CDs for the first time in, 20 years, right? Certificates of deposits. Like, when's the
Yeah.
last time you saw advertisements for that? It's the same thing, man. People are putting their monies in CDs now.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm going through right now is figuring out,
Playboys.
no, well, kind of, they're
Oh, there you
cardboard
go.
Playboys. This
Yeah.
is the current REA catalog, which I love getting. I have one here from Mile High.
Yep.
Which is doing the Wagner, which I held at Strongsville.
I just left the Queen Sleep one in a hotel in San Diego. It was my reading material.
Which one? Clean Sweeps.
Clean Sweep, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Going through these is an exercise in, I don't know. I want the 49 leaf Jackie, and that's kind of pretty high on my list, right? And it's come down quite a bit from COVID.
It has.
It's gotten a lot more. Still a very expensive card in any grade, but it's a lot more reasonable than it was. And so I'm like, maybe now's the time for me to buy a Jackie. And I look in the REA auction, John, and I kid you not, I think they have 9 in the current auction.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It feels, why would you put 9 in the same?
I don't get that. I know there's been, I've kind of seen it in my peripheral vision in the hobby lately, that big 55 tops stash that was discovered somewhere in Rhode Island or whatever, and it had like a dozen or more Sandy Koufax rookies. Like, why would you? I don't understand that, because you're immediately saturating the market. Same thing
Right.
with there, right? And what does that do to your consignees when you have competition from 8 other jackies or whatever? It just makes no sense. It seems like the grab for the dollar, again, human nature, the grab for the dollar takes precedence over common sense. Like, people don't want to slow roll anymore. And that's what the vintage game used to be about: long tail, slow roll. But it makes no sense to do that. And that's bad for sellers. I'm not quite sure. I'm talking about consigners. Maybe it's good for buyers. What do you think? If there's 9 options, good for buyers, but it's like, it just seems like somebody's doing somebody dirty. The auction houses are doing somebody dirty there.
I think the greed factor matters a lot. And I think that as auction houses get more and more prominent in the hobby and more collectors are aware of them, there's more and more people registering every day to bid on all these auctions. And so they have a larger pool to put all this. Whereas it used to be, I felt like I was in on the dirty little secret of the hobby, being on these auction house stuff. And certainly there were lots of people doing it, but not nearly like they are now. A decade ago, I was getting deals. I would be the only bidder on something, for $100, and it was, 1,000 Hall of Fame autographs or something. I'm being mildly sarcastic, but you could get great deals. Those feel like they're gone because of the popularity of it. That's a great thing, by the way, I think. But at the same time, now they're going, well, let's say take REA, and I'm going to speculate on what their thought process might be, but it could be, well, we've got 9 of these on consignment. Let's do them all at once, because we're going to get 5 more for the next auction, and you're seeing just cards that we once thought were rare now everywhere.
Right.
And with shows and eBay and auction houses, and it's like, oh my gosh, these aren't, you can find these whenever you want. You can buy a 52 Mano whenever you want. There's always,
well, that's the big thing, right? That was always the biggest card out there was the 52 Mano. We know about Hannes Wagner, but you would never see the Wagners, the T206 Wagners. You always saw 52 Manos at shows, and you still do. It's not that big of a deal to go past a showcase with a 52 Mano.
Right.
The biggest corporate presence at shows is in Tops, right? It's all these auction houses. How many, I know on East Coast shows or vintage shows, I know Philly show and stuff like that, there's always a huge presence of these auction houses at regular card shows. It doesn't have to be the national. So, they get the word out there. They're usually the first thing you see when you go into a Philly show. The auction houses are all huddled near the entrance to get the high foot traffic. So,
right.
Their marketing works, and it works both ways, right? For buyers and consignees, I guess, because people need a place to turn when they do have a bunch of cards that they inherited or whatever. So, I mean, I've witnessed that. You witnessed that firsthand. We've witnessed collections that change hands, lifelong collections, and it's an easy way, and it's like anything else. They're buying, their agents out there are pretty slick, and I don't mean that in a bad way. They just know to say the right things, and they produce just enough to produce enough green to make people turn over the cards, and good for them. Just not the way I tend to operate. It's like anything else. If you find the traffic too thick, then you just got to find another way to get home or get to work. And that's the same thing with collecting. If there is a genre or I don't know, an era of cards that's cluttered with, and the prices are going up, you just have to pivot, right? You've pivoted somewhat, right? You're getting some non-baseball slabs and stuff like that. It's just, what you got to do, right? You got a Jordan rookie or a Gretzky rookie or both now, right?
Rookie. I still want a Gretzky rookie, but
so it's like, those aren't as hot as they used to be. the Jordans, the Gretzkys, the Jim Browns, and it's like that's where you turn your collecting eye towards sometimes.
Yeah, that ability to pivot and is, I think, crucial for a number of reasons. Like you said, the constantly changing winds of the hobby and what's popular and what's hot, and it keeps it fresh for me, right?
Right.
I find myself now gravitating towards unusual stuff. I'm becoming more like Dr. Jim, or I've
Old.
seen so many of these cards, for so long. I want to see something I haven't seen before,
Right.
and that is becoming harder and harder to do. I regret this so bad. At the Strongsville show, Craig had a 39 Gaudi Premium Carl Hubble, and I'm kind of low key working on a Carl Hubble run. I just always, I loved the stories of him back in the day, and not a Giants fan, but just like Carl Hubble.
And it's not low key anymore, by the way.
It's
You
not.
announced it. Yeah, well done.
Multiple times. I passed on that card, right? It was $200. It wasn't crazy expensive, and it was something I've never seen that. And it's the familiar pose of him,
right,
leaning on the fence and leaning backwards, and it's on like 6 cards that he has. He's got that one photograph, but it was a photograph of it on the card, not a painting. And so I didn't scoop it up. And then a guy that I know bought it later like an hour later after I left the show, and was showing it on his, recap. And I'm like, darn it.
It could have been you, man.
I should have just bought it. Like, why didn't I just buy this? Because it was different. And
that's the thing. That's the difference between probably at Strongsville, there were more 52 Manels than there were that. Right.
No doubt. 100%.
So you have to weigh that. Like, when's the next time I'm going to see that again? And your thinking has to be recalibrated. You're going to see 33 Gaudi Ruth all the time. You're going to see all sorts of stuff, but the scarcity, you don't have. Maybe you paused because it was only $200. I'm not saying you did, but I'm just saying, like, Dr. Jim likes to talk about scarcity and demand, or you know what I mean? And sometimes, Ken Griffey Jr. is the opposite. It's not scarce, but it's in high demand. The 89 stuff like that is, you have to pounce on it because you don't know when you'll see it again.
Right.
And, Dan bought a Z-Nut Ray Keating card at the National because he thought I needed it. It turns out I had it, and he ended up keeping it because he's like, what are the chances of me finding one Z-Nut with Keating on it? And he kept it. So it's like, we are that, I don't know. I don't mean to tell you did the wrong thing, but you have to recalibrate your thinking on a case per case basis. And that's a great example right there. You might not see that card again.
And as I'm getting into more and more into pre-war and all kinds, just really expanding my horizons, I'm becoming much more similar to you in typesetting. I want an example of different kinds of cards. I want to be able to tell a story with, okay, these were tobaccos and these were confectionaries and these were this bubblegum. And so the more, I've never seen one like that. I bought Orlando gave me a Cuba card in Strongsville that I never had a Cuba card. And so just, wow, I just want to add these, even if it's just one.
Right.
But then I know myself, and it's like, well, I might as well get all of them, and that's the rabbit hole I'm afraid of falling down.
The good thing is there's plenty of rabbit holes. There's, the pre-war was dominated for many, many decades with T206s or the 33 Gaudis, and all this stuff has just come out of the woodwork and popular now, like the blankets, the B18 blankets, like I didn't remember seeing those when I was younger. I mean, I'm sure people were buying them up, but now you see them all the time in showcases, and it's fun because that stuff is getting the recognition and just getting you outside of the little T206 or T205 or T207 mold of getting the same cards over and over again. You know, you have ice cream cards, right? Your Younglings and your caramels. They're really having their moment in the sun right now, and just like the hot dog cards and the dog food cards and the root beer cards and all that stuff. Every decade seems to have its have those little treasures that are getting discovered, and you know, you see so much online, like on Facebook groups and stuff like that. It's really neat to see that stuff and the joy people have when they discover, oh, I didn't even know this existed. You know, the chem toy Super Balls from the late '60s, right, with Ted Williams and Harmon Killebrew and stuff like that. There's Super Balls with baseball players in them. It's like there's so much good stuff out there that the key is to keep finding joy in discovering those things, and like you said, when you're doing your inventory right now, that's where you get to relive those moments and the joy of owning the card, picking up the card, and then, you know, logging it into your spreadsheet.
Yeah, and appreciating what I have, because I've talked about this ad nauseum, but the chase is the fun part, but you also, there's a lot of fun and joy in just going through boxes and looking at cards that you already own and rediscovering them in a way, or remembering a moment when you bought it with, you know, I was with Keating when I bought this, and, you know, or I was with Keating when he lost his box of cards at the Dallas Card Show. You know,
Hey,
those kinds of things are fun.
By the way, you're probably one of your, I'm not saying last, but your most recent really great experiences was probably when you redid your Beast, right? And that's when you have, you know, that's not only the cards, but the way you store cards and organize cards and all that stuff adds to it as well. And when you were, you know, renovating that room, like it wasn't because you bought a new card. It was because you got to see your cards from a different angle or in a different light now. And it's like, that's not just about the cards. It's about, you know, how you curate the cards and navigate space with the cards and all that stuff. You know, I have my display cases, and a couple times a year, more than a couple times a year, everything goes away, goes in the safes or goes to the bank. And then when I come home from a trip, it all goes back out in a different order. And I come down the stairs and see it, you know, a different card or in a different way. So, or next to another card where it never had been next to. So, you know, that's how you have to look at your collection. It's not an accomplishment from a monetary standpoint. It's your museum, your masterpiece that you're curating right there.
That's so true. The way, how much joy I get from organizing and arranging, and there's a lot to that. I don't know. Could that be with anything, or is it only because it's cards? Like, would I feel that way about stamps, or, you know, some other thing that I don't really have a ton of interest in? Because I think there is something to be said for, I just have an organizational brain, right? And I think a lot of collectors do. And well, how can I make this the most efficient? Or what is the best way to display these cards? Or what makes sense for these? Like when you do your case, like, okay, I'm going to do Red Sox for a little while. Not that you would ever do Red Sox, but you know what I mean.
I've been known to collect a Red Sox player too.
There you go.
You know, it's no different than, to me, it's no different than somebody who rebuilds cars, right? And goes to a show on a Friday night or a drive-in or whatever. And like, that's their pride and joy. And they don't need to go to a car show to discover that, you know, they just need to drive down the street or just take the car cover off and polish the tires or clean the car. It's the same thing. You know, our joy is in hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard, but that, you know, a woman or a man who puts a car together by hand and sees it grow from a little rust bucket in the thing of beauty, it's the same joy you get there. And the same pride, you know?
To that. There's a maintenance component to that, right? Of keeping it up and keeping it looking nice. It's the same with our collections. There's a maintenance component to that is joyful and necessary at the same time.
Amen, they say.
Yes.
Yeah.
What else do you want to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. How was Strongsville? Was it good? Everybody
Yeah, it was good.
survive? Okay.
Yeah, it was good.
How was the big trade night?
I wasn't there for the trade night.
What?
Although I bought a card from the trade night because
Okay.
somebody went live and I saw a card that I wanted, and I called the guy. I'm like, "Hey, go find that card." And it was Orlando. I said,
That's pretty
"Orlando,
cool.
go find that card."
Poor Orlando, man.
And he bought it for me, a 49 leaf Johnny Mize.
Johnny
PSA
Mize.
one.
There you go.
Big cat.
What
And
do you have on the horizon? Is there a Dallas card show coming up, I guess? And
there is, I won't be going. My next show will be the National, pretty much.
yeah.
Barring you finding something at your local card shop that I need
No.
to fly to Philly for.
No. I've
which
got
I'm
I've got to
willing
figure out
to-
what hotel to stay at the National. I booked 2 reservations on purpose.
Are you planning on going to the National?
Yeah, I've got my ticket, and like I said, I've got 2 hotels, Hilton Garden Inn and a Hilton, all lined up.
Are those right there?
The Hilton Garden Inn's a little bit down the road. That's where I stayed last time it was in Chicago. The Hilton is right across the street.
Okay.
So I'll probably stay at the Hilton and pimp out my Hilton Garden Inn for a king's ransom of cards. See what happens. Yeah,
Nice.
I've been known to trade some hotels and some airline miles for some possible baseball cards in the past. So we'll see what
not
happens.
a bad thing.
No.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But that'll probably be my last big show for a while because, I'm in and I probably, just circling back to the Jackies, I probably won't buy one of them, even though I think because of there being so many in this auction, they're going to be reasonably priced. You got to weigh personal stuff, and I'm about to build a new house,
Right.
and it's the sticker shock of that is no joke.
Yeah, it doesn't end. It's there is no, whatever price you decided on or budgeted in the beginning, just double that, I guess.
Yeah, it's
what
pretty
happens.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to have to do for the first time, truthfully, in a long, long time, is be a lot more spending conscious on the card front. And what's great about it is I have so many great cards to already enjoy.
Right.
And part of the reason of my inventory thing is to keep this every minute I'm spend doing this, I'm not on eBay or I'm not looking at auctions or whatever, and I'm still enjoying my collection. Does that make
Right.
And so this project, which will take me likely months to do, will occupy a lot of my hobby time. Because
don't be in a hurry, man. There's no reason to be in a hurry. Those cards have been around waiting for you. They waited for you for a very long time. Don't be afraid to spend some time with them.
I'm literally looking at every slab and pulling. I'm not, just blanket checking box. Oh yeah, I know I have all those. I'm literally looking at every card. And
the Jackie's always going to be there. The problem with not one dealer who's sitting on a couple Jackies is going to say, "Oh shoot, the market's down. It's oversaturated." There's no reason for them to jump or to lower their prices. So it's not like you're in a position of power unless you can get one in an auction for dirt cheap. There's no reason to go out there and impulse buy out in the street because, they've been around for 70 plus years, 76 years. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
There's the market's not going to crater on a 48 and or 49 leaf Jackie.
True that.
Yeah. So save your pennies. The right opportunity will come. It's happened before, right?
Yeah. I'm redirecting my pennies. The money, luckily we had some profit from the Grail collection. That's going to go towards the ranch. And
there you go.
It's all, it's like everybody only has, every one of us has a finite amount of resources, right? No matter who you are. And I'm kind of at my finite.
You should build your house out of your slabs. You just just glaze that stuff onto your
I thought
house.
about doing my flooring in my card room of Gavin Lux PSA 10s. I think that
you wouldn't be able to wear your high heels. I know how you Cowboys are. You get your little 3-inch heels on the back of your boots. You probably scratch up those slabs.
I would put the slabs down and then put a layer of epoxy over it.
That makes sense. That completely makes sense.
A big clear coat of epoxy.
And you could tap dance. Then you could wear your tap shoes, right?
How cool would that be? That would be a great way to display my collection. It would ruin the cards, but
Yeah.
like,
And then
just
somebody would buy the house and then put like linoleum over it. And then 60 years from now, somebody would peel up the linoleum and like, oh, wow. Just like the old days when people would rip off walls and see baseball cards in there. Yeah. It's a gift that keeps giving.
Well, good talk, John. Thanks for coming on and just helping me fill an hour of people's time today.
No worries. No worries. I'll be back in a couple of years. That'll be great.
Years. More like a couple of months, but
okay.
I will talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching this week. We'll see you next week for another episode of The Golden Age of Cardboard. Have a good one. Keep collecting.